and welcome to the Journey to CEO Success podcast. I'm your co host, Melissa Saunders, along with the strategy execution guy and the co author of one of Amazon's newest best selling business books, The Journey to CEO Success, Patrick Thean. Hey, Patrick.
Hey, Melissa, how are you today?
Oh, good, good. For those of our listeners who do not know, you're actually a lifelong entrepreneur. I am always amazed that you were able to grow your first company to number 151 on the Inc. 5000 list. That's such an accomplishment. You're also a
Thank you.
CEO coach, an international speaker. You've been doing it for 25 plus years. Wow, you amaze me.
Thank you. Thank you.
Patrick, today we are going to talk about ways leaders can level up. I love this topic. It's, I think, chapter 6 in your new book. And what I love about it is that you dedicate before you tell leaders sort of, focusing on the external things, you want them to improve themselves first. Tell me a little bit about why you chose to do it that way.
Yeah, Zig Ziglar has a wonderful quote. He says, if you're not willing to learn, no one can help you.
Hmm.
If you're determined to learn, no one can stop you. So, the way this book is designed, I want to remind everybody that you got to start with yourself before you work on other people. In fact, I believe that if you're a leader that is not willing to work on yourself, you don't deserve to work with other people on themselves.
Hmm.
So,
Wow.
you know, in my journey, I've talked to, I don't know, a couple thousand companies, and I've found many companies that are unfortunately limited by the abilities and the leadership of their founder or their CEO. And many teams also can be frustrated by the limitations of their leaders. So I think, everyone should think intentionally about working on themselves. CEOs, leaders, do some things like discover what your blind spots are.
Hmm.
And by the way, a blind spot is, this concept is from when you drive a car, you got your rear view mirror, side mirror. Those two mirrors somehow miss this little spot over here called the blind spot. In
Right.
fact, some of these better cars and newer cars have a blind spot indicator to let you know that there's a car that you cannot see. So when I say blind spot, that's exactly what I mean. I mean that there's a blind spots that you do not see. By the way, blind spots are very interesting because usually if somebody were to tell you what your blind spot is, you will probably react negatively. Just like you don't think there's a car there, you probably react like, I don't think so. Are you serious? Whatever.
Yeah, right.
So blind spots are hard. But anyway, find your blind spots, find out what you do well so that you can maybe sharpen that to make it an even more incredible advantage for you and your company. Think about what gives you energy, because we tend to do things that we enjoy. And I think there's nothing wrong with saying, hey, these are the things I enjoy, I do well, and just do more of them.
Yeah, my grandma used to say, when you point a finger at someone, there's three fingers pointing back at you. And I think it's, her kind of sweet way of saying you need to really start on yourself first. That really resonates a lot with me. We were talking earlier about how our kids love playing those darn video games. And I'm telling you, mine will play for hours just to reach that next level. But you told me an interesting way to think about video games. Can you share with us a little bit about that?
Yeah, I was observing my daughter play a video game when it hit me that winning the game of business is quite similar. And what I mean by that is, when she finished the challenge, her avatar moved to the next level. And in the
Mhm.
next level, things moved faster and her reaction time had to keep pace with that change. The game got harder, the game got more interesting. But she got both some new monsters coming and some old ones. The enemies came faster. However, everything moved faster, and what would happen is that the failure would come faster too. So, she had to level up by learning new skills, acquiring new weapons, replenishing her health points, and doing all this quicker before her health hits zero. She also had to depend on her team to do the same. When her health points ran out, game over. By the way,
Yeah,
the reward for winning every level was entrance to the next level, where the
yeah,
game
right,
leveled up, right? Game got
right.
harder. Her survival depended on herself and her team leveling up their skills, or they would not win at that level. So, in that sense, winning the game of business is very similar. As the business grows to the next level, you need to level yourself up so that you can, first of all, solve some new problems, but also solve those same problems that you solved before.
Right.
They will come back to you, but you got to hit them quicker. Because as you get bigger, the consequences of making a mistake get more and more expensive. So, your tools, your processes, yourself, you better level up. Otherwise, you might be too slow to play at the next level.
Yeah, that's interesting that you say it that way. I know when you put it into a video game perspective, you have to continue to get better. And if you don't, man, you make it to level 20 or level 100. And if you are killed by one of those monsters, you got to go all the way back to level 1. So there are definite incentives to drive really great execution and learning from your
Yeah.
mistakes that you make along the way.
Absolutely, absolutely. And
Hmm.
I'll tell you, leveling up is not a one-time thing. Leveling up is a continuous thing. It has to happen repeatedly and continuously. And to do that, you need the right habits. So, this chapter will share 5 habits you need to intentionally and consistently develop in order to level up.
Yeah, that's wow, that's such an interesting approach. I hopefully the next time I see my son, wasting hours playing video games, I can at least sort of hope that he'll bring those same skills that he's learned to the business world. So my fingers are crossed.
Oh,
You
he'll
know,
do great. He'll do great.
Yeah, that's funny. Patrick, I also love football. I know, I guess while my son's busy playing those video games, I'm busy in the next room watching the next football game. And I know you do too. We've had lots of conversations. And you mentioned the Super Bowl isn't won during that one game, and it's really won during thousands of hours on the practice field. And a lot of times, as viewers or observers, fans of the team, you don't see all of that. You sort of just see those stars on the Super Bowl field. But really, in order to get better in football or in business, you really need to get coached on what you need to work on. And you told me the co-author of the book is just a master at gaining,
Yes.
gaining feedback. Can you tell me more about Michael?
Sure, sure. So, Michael Prager, my co-author, he's the CEO of Avid Exchange, and he's a master of getting feedback for himself. Now,
Mhm.
Michael's also a very unique and successful entrepreneur because he was able to take his company over 24 years from zero to unicorn to a public company. Today, Avid Exchange trades on the Nasdaq Stock Exchange. They're a public company. He's got more than 2,000 employees. There are very few companies that are able to do that and go from zero all the way with their founders. So
Yeah, that's
Michael is
remarkable.
a pretty amazing leader, and I'll share with you a quick story. He was in a board
Yeah.
meeting once, and the board member gave him some bad news, and it was a tough meeting. The news was really about himself. Gave him some feedback
Mhm.
on things he had to improve. After the meeting was over, Mike and I talked about it, and I said, "Michael, are you okay?" He said, "Yeah." He said, "Bad news is good news. Bad news is good
Wow.
news." And I said, "Where did you get that from?" He said, "Well, my board member said that to me. Bad news is good news because
Right.
because when somebody gives you bad news, you can do something about it. You can improve it. But if you don't know the bad news, you can't fix it, and it's probably going to slam you on the side of the head like a freight train."
Hmm.
So Michael took that bad news, and what he did was he said, "Okay, how do I get better?" He uses the feedback and he continually improves himself. That's what we mean by leveling up. So I learned that when somebody has enough courage to give you feedback, you got to first be thankful, just be grateful, and then process it yourself or with your coach later. But just say thank you because it is hard for people to give you feedback.
Yeah, earlier you mentioned about those blind spots and how some of the newer cars have those cameras or almost warning systems, so that even if you can't see it yourself, the camera almost serves as a backup to your vision and alerts you to potential issues or problems. And I guess when you ask coaches or colleagues, friends, spouses for feedback, you're kind of doing that same thing, right?
Very much so. Very much so. So, what we're doing here is when you level up, you've got to find ways to learn. And so to me, all this feedback and all is just about you learning. I think investing in learning is critical. So moving away from feedback to just investing in learning, I'll share a personal story with you
Okay.
that, years ago, my first company, I was dealing with a very difficult prospect, and it was a really tough negotiation. I got really discouraged, and I thought I was really a bozo at negotiating. And then this flyer came across my desk. It was, the Harvard School of Negotiation, Roger Fisher getting to yes, William Ury dealing with difficult people. And I thought, my goodness, this class was built just for me.
Perfect.
But
Yeah.
it was expensive. It was at Harvard Business School. But I finally thought, you know what, I got to go do this. So I did. I went there and I learned so much. My skill was just not good enough. So I leveled up my skill by going to that class, and I came back and I got way better. My company ended up with much better deals because I had leveled up my negotiation ability. So
Hmm.
this is a really practical example of where if I didn't do that, the deals that we would have negotiated for my company would have been artificially limited by my capability. And if my capability wasn't good enough, I'm sorry, my company isn't going to be as successful as it should be. So, for all you leaders out there,
Hmm.
you need to think that it's okay to invest in learning for yourself because you're trying to increase your leadership capability. You're trying to level up.
Yeah, I guess all the best leaders out there acknowledge that, you know what, I don't have all the answers. There is sort of a missing piece of information, whether it's, a day-to-day thing, or maybe like you were going into sort of new territory, and you just didn't have the skill set. And there's nothing wrong with saying, you know
There
what,
is nothing
I
wrong
need
with
to
that.
educate myself.
Yes. Yeah. So when so it takes. By the way, most entrepreneurs or CEOs have pretty decent egos. I mean, we got to have
Hmm.
egos, else we can't do the job. But you got to also have enough humility. So you got to have enough ego to say, I want to reach for the stars. I want to do something big. But you got to have enough humility to say, okay, but I don't know everything, and I need to invest in learning, or I need to ask for help. So, hey, let's talk about the 5 habits to level up. How about that?
Yeah, nope, that sounds like a
Okay.
plan.
So the very first one is that you have to be able to delegate because oftentimes you're in this role and you need to actually delegate responsibilities so that you can have enough space in your brain and in your work to actually attempt other things to level up. So the first habit is you gotta level up. You gotta ask your employees to help by visualizing what you're gonna delegate. That would
Hmm.
be something that would help you delegate.
Can you give me an example of what do you mean by when you say visualize? That's new to me.
Yeah, so sure. What I mean is that when you delegate and visualize, you want to share what success means to you, and
Hmm.
you want to really paint a picture. You want to be clear and describe what that looks like, and then you may want to ask that person to be able to share with you his or her version of what you just said. So you guys need to be able to see together and visualize what actually you're trying to achieve. And if you can see the same picture and that person is skilled, you have a pretty good chance of that person achieving what you're trying to delegate. And then you can be comfortable to delegate and check back on progress.
Okay, so for example, if you and I met for a project that you wanted me to sort of work on and do, you would tell me sort of the project, and then together, would you ask me to visualize that with you? Could how do I
Yes.
ask us to do that?
Yeah, so we would say, hey, let's do a podcast together. So let's visualize
Sure.
what it looks like, and let's talk about what success looks like. And so we will agree on that. And then I might ask you, so Melissa, how are we going to go do that? And you might say, hey, Patrick, we need to pick a platform. Don't know what the platform looks like yet. Haven't chosen that, but we need X, Y, Z. So you begin to tell me what are some key milestones, some key
Sure.
components of what. And so we kind of visualize the journey together of what that looks like. Now I can delegate that to you. happily.
Yeah, right. Because now you know, and I know that together, there might, you don't need to tell me exactly what needs to be done. Because I know a lot of people like to sort of work independently and, not be micromanaged, is sort of that
Yes.
word. But
Yes.
if we're visualizing it together and checking in along the way, I can see how that really would work both for me and for you. And it's funny, I think Michael Jordan, now, didn't he visualize making baskets before he actually would make the
Yes.
shot?
Yeah, Michael Jordan was a master of visualization.
Huh.
He actually said that before every game he visualized, he saw himself making all those baskets. By the way, this also reminds me of a friend who played hockey
Hmm.
for Team Canada, and he shared with me that when they go to tournaments and games, they would visualize standing on a podium. They would visualize like we've
The end
won
result.
championship, and they want to see that future. They envision it, and they do better that way. So
Huh.
visualization is really good. And you mentioned micromanage just now, and you're right. Some people make the mistake of thinking that if I tell you how I'm going to do it, I'm allowing you to micromanage me. But actually, no. If I tell you how I'm going to do it, I'm sharing. And if we have the same vision of how it gets done,
Mhm.
you probably will be able to do it by yourself, and it won't get micromanaged. So that's the first habit. The second habit is to reflect regularly to build self-awareness. So when you build self-awareness, that means you need to learn more about yourself. And by the way, the in emotional intelligence, self-awareness is one of five key components of emotional intelligence. So I'm
Mhm.
not the only person that talks about how important it is to have self-awareness. I have learned that a leader can only get better if they actually continue to get more self-aware. One of the best ways to do that is to reflect. So if you reflect regularly, you can build more self-awareness. We have templates in the book. I've
Mm.
got two templates in the book. One is about your energy. Where is your energy going? Good, bad, and how does your team enjoy working with you? And another template we have there is really a simple one about reflecting, beginning with gratitude. What did you learn? And then how do you then prioritize for the following week? And then how do you collaborate with your team members? So that is the process that if you do on a regular basis can really help you learn about yourself, get more self-aware, and level up.
I think we do that really well here at Rhythm Systems. And, one of the practices I've learned from you is actually scheduling time on my calendar so that I can think about the previous week and actually make some of those self reflections. Is that a habit that you coach?
Yes. Totally. And this is a very simple, but it is not easy. And
Mm.
usually when we work with the new CEO, I'll ask him to go and get into a pattern, a rhythm of self-reflection. And it's easy to understand. It's simple to do, but it's really hard to get it done. So one of the secrets I would share is that if you find some time in your schedule, I would say put it into your regular flight path, is how I would put it. If you have in your natural schedule, there may be some times where you're naturally quiet, and
Mm.
it's just so for me, Sunday afternoons are really good. And so for me, I actually do my reflection and preparation for the week on Sunday afternoon. That just happens to be the right spot in my life and time where I'm more quiet. There's not a lot of noise around me, and I have some peace and quiet to reflect.
Do you think most CEOs or leaders, do you think they do that on Sundays? Because you're not the only one I've heard really successful people sort of prepare for the week on a Sunday. It's interesting just how a
Yeah,
lot of
I would
people do
say that I've heard quite a few CEOs do that,
that.
but
Yeah,
but I would say that that's like saying that works for him or her. Will it work for me? And I would say, I don't know. It's
yeah,
really
yeah.
much more about your natural rhythm. What works
Hmm.
for you?
Yeah, that's a great point, I think. Tell me about habit three.
So habit three is about seeking and diffusing blind spots. And so I kind of mentioned it a little bit earlier, but I'll
Mhm.
share with you. I did a coaching session today with with a potential CEO, and what we talked about was blind spots exactly, and I shared that blind spots is really hard. Typically, like I said, you got a mirror here, you got a mirror there in the car, you don't see the blind spot. How that
Mhm.
translates to leadership development is usually if someone were to tell you what your blind spot is, you would probably not agree because you don't see it. You
Right.
don't see it.
Right.
You probably get offended. I don't think so, right?
Yeah.
So I would say the following. First, you can only receive that kind of coaching if you're open. If you're open, you almost have to invite somebody to watch you and share blind spots with you.
Tell me more
Secondly,
about that.
yeah, and secondly, whoever it is that you invite to help you do that, you need to have a deeper level of trust.
Mm.
So think about it, right? I'm going to share with you, if I'm your coach, I'm going to share with you something that might surprise you, that might even make you angry.
Mm.
And so if you don't have a trusted relationship, you will probably first think, well, Patrick got that wrong. Or how can he think that about me? So, like I said, it's called a blind spot because you don't see it. Therefore, when it's shared with you, your normal reaction is going to be, no way. So I would share with you that step one is to breathe and just say thank you. So breathing and just saying thank you gives you a couple of seconds
Hmm.
between action and reaction. Your natural reaction is going to be annoyance and pushing back. Instead, you want an intentional reaction. The intentional reaction is to just say thank you. Now, sometimes we make the mistake of going, well, I do that when. So you
Mm.
need to explain
Pushing
yourself.
it back.
Well, you're explaining yourself. And look
Yeah.
what just happened. I said, explain yourself, and you said pushing it back, right?
Mhm.
By the way, you just demonstrated what typically happens. I'm explaining myself. I'm not trying to push back. However, the person who's giving me feedback will feel like I'm pushing back. And that
Mm.
person might feel like, oh man, I feel bad. I'm making Patrick unhappy. I wish I didn't give him the feedback. If that person feels that way and thinks that way, you probably won't receive any more feedback. So think
Mm.
about it. That
Right.
person went out on a limb, gave you feedback, took the courage to share something that might hurt your feelings. And so
Right.
you want
It's
to make
not
it
an easy,
easy.
I don't think that's
It
an
isn't
easy
easy.
thing.
It isn't easy. You want to
Mm.
make it easier. You want to make it safe. You want to just say thank
Mhm.
you. And you go process it yourself. So I think one of the mistakes we make is we try and process it with the person who shared that with us. And
Instantly.
that's yes, and that's when it feels like I'm pushing back, right?
That
So
makes
instead, I would get curious. So I would go back to one of the earlier practices in the book and I would apply curiosity. I would say, hey, thank you very much for sharing that. I would like to understand that better and ask a couple of questions. Or if you don't want to ask questions, just say thank you and process it. But it's okay to be curious and go, I'm trying to make sure I understand what you're saying. I want to make sure I understood it so I can improve myself. Thank you very, very much. So that's about seeking and receiving getting the blind spot information, getting
sure.
feedback.
And I think that brings us to the fourth habit that you mentioned in the book, and that's asking for and receiving feedback.
Yeah,
So it's not just sort of waiting for a coach or a boss to give you that feedback. It's
yes.
actively sort of asking for it and hoping that someone will have enough trust in you to give you that feedback.
That's right. Asking for feedback is always a good thing. You know, I always say, look, it's free. And if you didn't like it, so what? Did you pay for it? You didn't. And if it was good, it'll make you better. So I do think asking for the feedback would be really good. And the last habit is to work with a coach. And I do believe in having a coach, by the way. The great Steve Jobs had a coach. His name was Bill Campbell. And Bill Campbell wrote a book called $1 Trillion Coach. So if guys like Steve Jobs were so accomplished, I mean,
Right.
you why the heck would he need a coach? Well, if Steve Jobs had a coach and needed a coach, why wouldn't you? Why wouldn't you have a coach, right? Why wouldn't
Yeah,
you
that makes
use a
sense.
coach to be better?
I was thinking about that watching actually Monday Night Football. It's so funny. I mean, in sports, it's common and you see it all the time. A player might make a bad mistake on the field. he or she will go to the sideline and, they know that they are going to go straight to the coach. The coach gives them that feedback. And it's so interesting that as an athlete, you expect it and you want that feedback so that you can improve and get better. But in the business world, it's like it's almost a different playing field where a lot of people will feel it's a weakness if you have a coach, but it definitely isn't.
It definitely isn't. And in fact, I would say in the last 15 to 20 years, that trend has happened. Like more and more people want and are receiving coaching. So, I would say think of yourself as a corporate athlete,
Yeah. Oh,
right?
I love that,
Athletes have
Patrick.
coaches. Think of yourself as a
Yeah.
corporate athlete and get yourself a coach to help you.
That's unbelievable. And I think just because this is such great information, I'd love to just quickly just recap the habits. So the 5 habits for leveling up, the habit 1 that you told us, delegate to level up. Love that one. Habit 2 is to reflect regularly to build self-awareness. So put yourself a calendar invite so that you can do that on your own sort of time and day that works best. Seek and diffuse blind spots. Habit 3. Habit 4. Love this one. Ask for and receive feedback. And that habit number 5, Patrick, tell us again.
So work with a coach, man. Work
Yeah,
with a coach.
I love that. What a great discussion we've had today. And I really want to encourage our listeners who might have a CEO, a future CEO on their holiday list. This book might be a great present to give. It is a number 1 Amazon best-selling book in, I think, 4 categories. Is that right, Patrick? So,
Yes. Actually,
Amazon
five
can't be
categories,
wrong.
but yes.
5
Yes.
categories now.
Yeah.
That's unbelievable. You can get it on Amazon now, or if they have a Kindle, you can actually get it for them on the Kindle, and you can see right now, $8.99 is the price. So that's a big, huge discount. So I want to thank you, Patrick, for taking the time to talk about leveling up. And until next time, enjoy your journey.
Thank you very much, Melissa. Glad to be here.